Hello and welcome to this on-demand event today. My name is John Cheek. I'm here from Uni Taste Days, and with these events, we provide impartial guides to studying different subjects at university. And today is the turn of food science and nutrition, and I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by Dr. Carol Almer, joining us from the University of Leeds, who is our resident expert and is going to tell us all about the course. So, Carol, can I come to you first, just with a question about yourself, and just if you can just tell us a little bit more about yourself and your career to date?
I'm Dr. Caroline Almer, but everyone calls me Carol. I'm a lecturer in nutrition here at the School of Food Science and Nutrition in the University of Leeds. And I first started working here about 5 years ago after I completed my PhD. So for my PhD, I looked at healthy and environmentally sustainable diets and what it is that causes certain people to eat in those ways and other people to, I guess, choose or decide to not eat in those ways. Before I studied for my PhD, I studied for an undergraduate degree in food science and technology with nutrition. And then I studied for a master's in public health nutrition. What else I do at the School of Food Science and Nutrition? So in addition to being a lecturer in nutrition, I'm also the undergraduate admissions tutor here in our school. So if you did attend one of our open days or post-African days, I'm like the happy smiley face that you'd see at all those other events.
In terms of today, people are going to be watching this that hopefully are interested in food science and nutrition. And if I can just start with a basic question, are they like one of the same thing? Like if someone's interested in food science, nutrition, or are we talking about completely different things in terms of studies?
Um, are they completely different, as in mutually exclusive? I would say no, they're not that. Then, well, they're different in a sense that they tackle different sides of this one big picture that is this one huge thing that is food. But they are complementary and they build on each other and they basically what you get from food science can be helpful for nutrition, and what you get from nutrition can be helpful for food science. So, what is food science and what is nutrition? I guess people would want to know. Probably start this with a backstory as to why I even decided to do this or how I ended up doing this. So when I went to study for my A levels, I had been given the subjects physics, biology, chemistry, and mathematics. And I just thought to myself, I don't really enjoy physics, so I don't really want to study physics. And I was then given the option to choose a subject that wasn't one of these that I could add and make a fourth option. And I remember coming across foods and nutrition, as we called it in my high school, and thinking, I've never heard of foods and nutrition. I wonder what it's all about. So I went and attended the very first lesson, as they call it in A levels. I say lecture because I'm now so used to being at university. Went and attended the very first lesson, and I remember seeing aspects of biology, aspects of chemistry, and I really enjoyed biology and chemistry. So once I saw that, I was like, definitely saw that, like, this is definitely where I'm going to go. As I kept on studying the subject, I then got introduced to some of the aspects that I thought I had left behind in physics, which I did find in foods and nutrition as well. So I didn't quite get away from physics completely, but it wasn't like the physics that you'd get from a pure physics kind of learning. It was more like applied physics, and that was like a lot more enjoyable for me. So how we see food science here in the School of Food Science and Nutrition at Leeds is food science is really about understanding what are the physical chemical properties of food. So why is an ice cream thick, or why does a jelly flow, or why does it have a certain structure, for example? What components are there in a food, and what are the properties of those components, and how do we take advantage of those very properties to create what it is that is called food? So you can think of something as simple as oats, grinding the oats into a flour and then mixing water in the flour and heating that and then coming up with an oat porridge. That's essentially food science in motion, applied food science, but you're only able to come up with the porridge by us being able to understand what is an oat constituted of, what happens when we mill the oat, what happens when we apply a specific temperature with a liquid present for a specific period of time, which is why there are instructions on the packet, and how does that translate into a porridge. So food science as a subject is essentially about understanding that and all those dynamics in play. On the other hand, nutrition is about, okay, we have this amazing oat porridge. What happens when someone eats some oat porridge in the short term? What happens to their body? Does their body chemistry change? Do certain aspects, are they enhanced? And then what happens in the long term? So if somebody ate oat porridge every day for 20 years, 30 years, of course, in addition to so many other things, what happens to them as an individual? What happens to their chemistry, biochemistry? Did they gain weight? Do they lose weight? What happens to their blood glucose? What happens to their blood fats? Things like that. So hopefully you can see that the nutrition is enhanced by having some understanding of the food sciencey components, but also food science is enhanced by having some knowledge of the nutrition components. If I'm going to make a porridge and I want it to be like this for this specific person, what do I need to understand about this person? So those are like the two subjects.
What a fabulous answer. I loved that. Right then. And also, Carol, it's so interesting to hear about your own journey and kind of, how you got first interested in, and obviously physics you didn't want to do, and then you ended up getting a career in terms of placement. So, wow. Okay. This might touch on your answer to the last question a little bit, but in terms of kind of the decisions to study food science and nutrition, I kind of group the two together. I know, so far they're related, but could potentially be different. And I know at Leeds, I believe, Gary, at Leeds you can do one of the two, can you, in terms of course?
Yes. So at Leeds you can do food science, or you can do nutrition, or you can do food science and nutrition.
Got you. Okay. Yeah. So actually a lot of people perhaps watching this video might be, watching this having decided they want to do one of the two and kind of contrasting. So in terms of like the why might students consider studying it, do you mind just giving us an overview, maybe from your own perspective, also what perhaps students that you speak to say, what, why are they interested in studying this subject area?
So I've spoken to, students that do end up coming here. So the students that I actively teach in the classrooms, but I also really like to speak with prospective students when they come to open days or post-African days and so on and so forth. And for many of them, it's basically an interest. So a love for some aspect of the sciences. So maybe somebody really loves biology and wants to see, okay, I like biology, I like understanding about cells and stuff like that, but how can I apply that to the human being, to the human form? And that then translates into someone getting an interest in pursuing something in nutrition. And then on the other hand, lots of the students that come in, especially those that come in wanting to do food science, like they're very decided they want to do food science. Very different to me is there'll be students that have an interest in chemistry, but also do have an interest in physics. And so being able to study a degree where they're not just studying physics principles or chemistry principles, but it's applying those principles into something. So understanding certain thermodynamics or whatever it is in physics and applying that into either food processing or understanding food or designing a process or something like that, but more like in the food processing or food system kind of thing. So for many of them, it really stems from an interest. So having an interest in that, and it's not even really having an interest in food tech. So not everyone who comes has maybe studied food tech in A levels or has really come across food science or nutrition as a subject, but they have a lot of interest in the scientific subjects that are then built on in food science, like your physics, your chemistry, some of them it's psychology. So things around understanding dietary behavior, understanding why people eat the way they do, understanding how decisions are made so that when you design a public health nutrition intervention, for example, that's aimed at getting people to eat less salt, or you understand how people make decisions and therefore at what point you can influence that decision-making process, or things like geography, sociology. So increasingly, we're getting people that have this interest that intersects between things like geography, but also sciences. And they have this really renewed interest in things like sustainability and all of those. And those are things that you can get from studying a degree like in food science. So what has sustainability got to do with food science, food processing, food packaging, all of those things comes in that, geography, social sciences, humanistic aspects, in addition to the sciences component, as well as sustainable eating, sustainable diets, impacts on the environment, and that intersection with nutrition and biology and stuff like that, and decision making. It's all very fascinating, honestly. I could talk about food science and nutrition for hours.
And it's funny, you touched a little bit on psychology, and one thing, and I know this is a really basic comment, but it always frustrates me, and I bet if you saw it, frustrate you too. It's the people that get their food and they put salt and pepper on without even tasting it. It's like, what are you doing? I don't understand. Anyway, back on topic. So we've kind of talked about what students, why they might consider the subject area. And actually, Carol and I were chatting before this, and we hoped to record this in a lab, but the lab was making sound, so we're not going to do that. But in terms of touching on like the what to expect and lab, you might be nice to talk about actually where students might learn. But if they study food science and nutrition or nutrition, what can they expect on the actual course?
Well, bearing in mind that I'm speaking objectively, but also from this perspective and my own lived experience, having studied food science and technology and then nutrition, I would say you can expect to be challenged, firstly. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I, in fact, think it's a really, really good thing, because it's many amazing opportunities to grow as an individual and also to grow in your knowledge and competencies. So not only are you challenged in terms of this is what you know, why, what do you think, build on that, etc., but also challenge in terms of, okay, now you know this, and then what? What do you then do with it? How do you apply this? How do you communicate this? So on and so forth. On the program for undergraduate students, it's a mix of, I would say, classroom-based and lab-based. Unfortunately, you won't be able to see our labs, but if anyone is watching this and is interested in exploring more, at least from the University of Leeds, we do have videos that show our labs virtually, so you can actually go on our website and look at the labs, virtual lab space. Really amazing, highly recommend. But what you can expect is you can expect a mix of classroom-based work and lab-based work. You can expect a mix of independent-based work in far as assessments are concerned and group-based learning. You can expect a dip into what we call authentic assessment. So really getting you to attend to real world challenges. So this is a problem in the food industry currently in the UK. We would like you to solve this problem. Can you go ahead and design a product that meets this remit and that would therefore solve this problem? So depending on what year you're in, there's different things that you'll encounter. So for example, first year would be basic foundational things, bringing everyone up to speed. Okay, when we say food science, what do we mean? When we say nutrition, what do we mean? Okay, it's everyone at roughly the same level, and as far as biology, chemistry, a bit of physics, some understanding of statistics, because we know all those are very, very important as you continue going along in the course, but also starting to get you to work in groups. What's group work like? What does it mean to have team spirit? What does it mean to negotiate different aspects within a team? What does it mean to allocate group work within a team? What does it mean to write a scientific report, for example? So those are the kinds of things. What does it mean to sit through a lecture? You will have done A-levels, you're used to sitting in a classroom, it's now a lecture. What does it mean to actually be responsible for your learning, supported of course by your lecturers and so on and so forth? And then second year, you then start to build further on the knowledge you've got in your first year and so on and so forth until you get to the end. And at the end, you'd then be expected to have this final year independent dissertation project, so where you go and work on something that is really of your interest. If you're studying nutrition, it could be something, I don't know, related to, again, why do people sprinkle salt on their foods? Like getting to understand that. You might design a survey, you might do a focus group where you talk to people and really try to get behind their actions, their decisions. Or you might do a project in the lab, so running experiments, collecting data, analyzing that data and drawing up conclusions. or you might analyze a set of data that's already been collected, but you then be applying the statistical principles that you've learned throughout your course to that data set, and then coming up with conclusions and recommendations. So it's a really nice different mix of modules, different people that are teaching, myself included. I'm one of the people that teaches on the course, different kinds of assignments. So I don't know, they're really, honestly, sometimes I look at what the program looks like now and I'm even mildly jealous, because I feel like, oh gosh, I wish I had this when I was studying my own degree, which was a few years ago. But things like, oh, this is the question, can you design a video and submit that as an assessment? And I think it's really nice because you not only learn technically speaking, the technical things, but you're also building other skills, because we do have students that come in and, I mean, yes, you love the sciences, but you're also a creative person. You're the kind of person that can, put together a really like banging video or something, like nice animation. You're the kind of person that can put together nicely, well put together poster and stuff. So it's just really wanting students to utilize as many skills that they already possess, but also learning as many skills as they possibly can before they go out into the world of work.
Love that, Carol. No, you certainly did, and it's really nice to hear about the stuff that students do outside the subject, the wider skills, transferable skills, and stuff as well. So, final thing I want to do, Carol, if it's okay, just ask two final questions.
Okay.
Look at like for the students that are interested, where we're going to touch on application tips. Then the last thing I want to ask you is about careers. But if I touch on applications first, so as students watching this, they're really keen for the one of food science or nutrition, perhaps both. Is there any kind of application tips or things you'd like to see in a student that you could share with us today?
Yeah, so I think for me, the first thing is to first get an understanding of what's required. So what are the admissions requirements, isn't it? Because it's all fine and well for you to have an interest, but let's say you're studying for your A-levels and the kinds of subjects you're doing wouldn't be what's required for someone to get on the program, then there's already a mismatch. So my first piece of advice would be first get an understanding of what are the requirements, and do I have what is required within the requirements. And here, by saying do I have, I don't necessarily mean grades, but am I on the right trajectory already? And would I be able to do that, for example? And that's really regardless of whether you're doing A-levels or whether it's BTech or something like that. And if there's anything in terms of, oh, I'm not quite sure because I'm doing this and I'm doing this, but I don't know what they translate into because they're not strictly speaking the traditional A-levels, then contacting whoever it is that's assigned to whichever universities and saying, hey, look, I have an interest in this. I'm planning to apply, but I just really want to be sure if I would be able to get in, hypothetically speaking, with what I'm studying now. Yeah. Second thing is, I guess interest is like the very first thing. I haven't mentioned it because I assume those that will be watching this probably have an interest either in food science or in nutrition, or they have an interest in a subject that is related. So have an interest in chemistry or have an interest in biology. And I say that because I've hosted open days and I've had guests that have come in to attend, for example, a chemistry open day and have decided to drop by at the food science open day, and they think, well, hold on, actually, I think I'd much rather prefer this to chemistry because I can see how I would apply the chemistry that I would be learning into something that's quite tangible. So interest, and then having a clear understanding of what's required and whether you're on the trajectory. So then when it comes to putting together the application and writing the personal statement, it's just really think about it as your personal statement is what speaks on your behalf when you're not there. Your personal statement is this piece of paper. It's objective. We don't really know who you are. We've never met you. And it's basically you are telling us who you are based on what's been written. Doesn't mean it has to be perfect, but we really want to get an understanding of who you are, why you might want to study this subject, what you think you would do with this subject, what you think you might add to the student body. Like if you came to our university, for example, those are the kinds of things when I do look through personal statements that honestly make me smile and just really make me think, oh, good, we have some really enthusiastic students coming. Because when I know this cohort of enthusiastic students, and it means I can come into the lecture room with enthusiasm, and it's basically like fire meets fire, and it's just really amazing when both sides are enthusiastic. So I guess it's, yeah, really having an understanding of what it is you're doing, how well they fit in the requirements, having the interest and an idea of where it is that you're hoping to go after the degree, and then just really sharing yourself with us when you put together that personal statement, I would say. Yeah. And then if you can attend open days of like the many different institutions that you'd want to, sometimes there's like virtual open day kind of things where you can listen in that are on demand. I think open days are really good because they give you an opportunity to actually ask questions that might not be answered by the information that's on the website, but also they give you an opportunity to put a name to the face. And very importantly, I feel like open days are like a really good vibe check. So you go to a place and it's a great way for you to actually, okay, do I vibe with this place? Can I see myself here? Do I think I would fit in? Yeah, so those would be my tips in as far as applying and trying to make up your mind to, yeah, pursue.
Love that, Carolyn. And as someone that runs a university events website, that music to my ears about open days. So thanks for
Yeah.
the last thing, last but certainly not least, to ask you is there's going to be some students that are watching this, and maybe even some schools watching it with students that support
Mhm.
students to make decisions that are very career focused. So actually thinking, what do people go on to do? Do you mind just giving us a snapshot of what, what opportunities are out there if you've got a food science or nutrition degree?
Yeah. So, I think I'll start it by saying, as far as I know, the food industry in the UK is one of the largest employers of people. Um, and what we have had, is that generally speaking, lots of our students tend to have jobs shortly after they've completed their degree. What do they go on to do? What students go on to do will depends on, it's a mix of what they've studied and what they're interested in doing. So food science students, for example, lots of them will go into the food industry, as in food processing. So maybe they'll go to do food product development, or they'll go on to become food quality controllers. And that's largely speaking in the UK, but we do get quite a good number of international students. So they would be going to their home countries to work in those jobs, or they would be going to other countries to do similar roles. Some of them would end up in roles that are a bit non-conventional, like in procurement or buying. And that might not strike you as something that a food science graduate, for example, would do. But because they've got a good understanding of food quality control, things like hazard analysis, critical control points, which are very, very paramount if you want to, if you're basically using good manufacturing principles to come up with a product that is safe, that is, will not cause harm when it's consumed. You have to make sure that everything is up to scratch right from the buying stage, isn't it? So what better person to get to buy your products than someone who understands food quality and, can put in place those checks and balances to ensure that. Then in terms of students that study nutrition, some of them will go on to do further studies so that they can become dietitians, because some of them do want to go on to work in the NHS, for example. Others will go on to do nutrition practice, so they will practice as nutritionists, and they're able to do that not just because of the kind of education they get here, which is amazing, but also because our degree is accredited by the Association for Nutrition. So by the time you finish, you're an associate registered nutritionist, and you can support people well within certain, of course, boundaries of practice, because a nutritionist is not the same as a dietitian, isn't it? But there are certain things that you can do more often than not under the supervision of a dietitian, and really support people in terms of healthy eating, or take part in things like health promotion programs, so going out into communities, talking to people about healthy eating, etc. We've also had some students that go into things like policy, nutrition policy. So, when the government comes up with things like 5 a day, for example, or changing the formulation of sugar, the amount of sugar in sugar sweetened beverages, all of that is policy, but all of that is driven by people that are working in nutrition, that are studying in nutrition, that go and look at the evidence and then give the government recommendations based on the evidence. So that's something that you can actually do, making like a tangible impact in society. So you're not just impacting your family, but you're possibly impacting the nation as a whole. And what's better than that? There's other things like working as a dietetics assistant, again, in hospitals. Some of our students have gone on to do that. And then others like go on to be self-employed. Really, it depends on the specific student, what they've studied and what they would like to do with their degree. One of the things that I think I would like to mention at this stage, we haven't really talked about it directly, and I know this is targeted at undergrad students, isn't it? And our undergraduate programs are 3 years long, but we do have some students that will study for 4 years. And why they study for 4 years is they could decide to do what's called a placement year or industrial placement year. And essentially what that means is that for 1 full year, they're going to work somewhere as a normal employee of that somewhere. So for example, they'll go and work in Nestle if they're studying food science and nutrition, or sometimes even nutrition, and they're doing all kinds of different things. So really learning to work in a team. They actually come up with products entirely by themselves, of course, supervised by people within the industry. And it's always really nice looking at the stuff that they've come up with on the actual supermarket shelf. And I mentioned that because a lot of the time, having had that placement opportunity, that really gives lots of students, if not all the students that go on the placement year, a steer into what they want their career to actually look like. Because you go into that placement having this perception of what it's like to work in this role. You actually work in that role for a year. And by the time you finish the year, you've learned many things. You've learned how to work in a team. You've learned how to grow professionally. You've applied the theoretical things that you've gotten in the course, but it also really helps you concretely decide, I want to be a buyer. I want to be in food product development. I actually enjoyed quality control. No, I think I'd like to do this. So that's like one of the, I guess, pluses of like taking that placement here is it sort of gives you some sense of direction in terms of what kind of job, what kind of role you might want to do later. But even for those that don't take the placement yet, there's always support with like careers advice and stuff. And I'm sure it's not like that just in our university. It's like that in so many universities because they're always wanting to support students to, you know, go on and build successful careers after going through uni.
That was fabulous, Carol. Thank you so much.
You're
Just to
welcome.
pick up on a few things you said there, I'm a huge fan of placement years, so I'm really glad you mentioned placement years.
Yeah.
And also we at Uni Tasters work with lots of careers departments at unis, and careers is I'm sure any university that the students pick, you'll get wonderful career support because it's so important for the student, but
It
also
is.
so important for the uni.
I completely agree. I did do a placement year when I studied for my undergrad, and it really, really helped. That's the time when I thought to myself, okay, I've done food science, I've enjoyed, because I really loved chemistry, still do, and biology. Really loved the chemistry aspect, enjoyed biochemistry tremendously. But I remember after having completed my placement period, just knowing without a shadow of a doubt that while I enjoy these aspects, I definitely want to do nutrition because I had done both. So that placement is what really got me, okay, I want to do nutrition. So I'm going to do a postgrad in nutrition. And then after that, I want to go like in nutrition research and academia. That helped me make up my mind. If I didn't have that opportunity, then I'd probably have found my way somehow. But yeah, it was just really helpful having that placement.
Thanks, Carol. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed this conversation. The final thing for me to do, Carol, is just to say a big thank you to you. That is
Oh,
Dr.
thank you.
Carol Allen, Jonas University Leeds. Carol, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure.